excited to be here today. Today, I am interviewing Ella. Ella is an SLP. And then I was like, I had this brain moment. I'm like, you're in Edmonton, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then I was like, oh no, maybe she's in like the outskirts somewhere. Not that it totally changes things, but and I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit more. Just tell us a bit about like how many years you've been in practice, where you're working, the types of clients you're working with, and yeah, give us a little background as to who you are.
Sure. So I've been an SLP for 13 years. I started working with an agency that provides in-home supports for kids with complex needs. And then I went into the schools for a bit. But I always did some private on the side. And then I'm not so good with the years thing. Like, oh, in 2018, I did this. But I'm thinking, was the year my daughter turned 2. So that would be like 2017. I decided to make the jump and go into full-time private practice. Interestingly, the population is mostly still the same kids I worked with at first, which is in-home programming for children with complex needs. Here in Alberta, our government has a program called FSCD, Family Supports for Children with Disabilities. And so that's the type of funding that most of my families have. I also do a little bit of sort of what I think of as like real private, where it's just families sort of paying out of pocket to do artic or language. And I do have a school contract this year. So I'm doing a little bit of school support up north in more remote communities where they're having a harder time finding supports and staffing those positions. So most of my caseload is kids with autism. I do a lot of social communication, social thinking. I also have a lot of children who have Down syndrome, so that kind of more complex profile there as well. And I just won't do apraxia. So I have a really good friend, the one who referred me to Therabyte. She loves apraxia, motor speech, oral motor. So when she gets phone calls for kiddos with autism, she tends to send them my way. And when I get phone calls for kiddos with apraxia, I send them her way because we've both sort of specialized in opposite directions in that regard.
Love that. I love that about private and that ability to see the types of clients that you really prefer to see. And I would imagine you found this too, as you niche down, you tend to then draw those types of clients to you, and people with similar needs tend to come your way. And when they don't, then yeah, you send them where they're going to be better served, right?
Well, in Facebook parent groups, like I think it's really easy to underestimate the power of those groups. But when COVID hit, I had a little bit of a lull in my caseload and was like more actively looking for clients. And so I just asked 1 or 2 parents if they could mention in their parent groups that that I was looking for new clients. And it was unbelievable how quickly the spots were filled up. But I think often as professionals, we don't really know about those groups because we're not part of them. They're not for us.
We're going to jump into your journey about you getting into private practice. And I want to hear a little bit more about that beginning part. You were working in public and then you were making that transition into private practice. What kind of supports did you have and what did that transition look like?
Sure. So like I said, right as a new grad, even I had 1 or 2 private clients, and that was because I got really fortunate. And when I did one of my first external placements for university, my supervisor was just a fantastic mentor. And so she had moved on from the public health system to this agency providing in-home supports. So she was the one who really kind of got me hooked up with my first grown-up job. And she was the one who said to me, you should do private on the side, like just start now. She gave my contact information to the first kiddo I had who was a private client. And she said to me, all you need is a carbon copy receipt book. Like you need to be able to write them a receipt and have a copy for you for the taxes. Like that's it. So I started with my carbon copy receipt book and file folders, which were purple because it's my favorite color. And I got to choose my own file folders. So that was very exciting. And I really liked right from the get-go, the control to like chart the way I wanted, to have my files the way I wanted. I feel like a lot of SLPs will relate to that. We're a little type A as a group.
Yes.
It's just the way we are.
Yeah.
So then I just sort of chugged along, having a couple extra kids during the week that I would see in my home office at that time. And then I had switched into working for the schools, and my private practice was a little bit bigger, and I was starting to take some of these FSCD contracts. So I had some connections, because that's something I discovered really quickly. Like, once you've served on one or two multidisciplinary teams privately, then everybody just shares everybody's information. Like, we all know each other. And so I had a director of one of the companies who administers these contracts say to me, like, are you ever going to go full-time private? I have a stack of files on my desk I need an SLP for. I could fill your caseload tomorrow if you will just go full-time. And I was like, nope. I like the school. There's a pension, and there's PD funds, and there's health benefits, and all. I like having all of that. And I had an EA at the school, like maybe a few days later. She was talking to me about one of our really complex kids, and she said to me, well, you didn't see him enough. And I was like, you're not wrong. I didn't, but I saw him as much as this caseload in this school was going to allow me to see him, and it wasn't enough. And that was kind of the push that sent me over the edge, especially knowing that I had someone who assured me she could fill my caseload. I wasn't going to have to go through a building up period. Mm-hmm. And so that all happened sort of in the month of June. And so I gave my notice at the school division that I would not be returning in September, and spent July and August really kind of picking up new kids. And then that was it. It was full-time private practice ever since.
That's amazing. And so how do you continue to get referrals then? Is it through those Facebook groups or through these multidisciplinary teams you're on?
It's mostly the multidisciplinary teams. So the way services in Alberta are funded is a real patchwork. So sometimes there's families and they're getting their funding directly, and so they're building their own team. And so I've got a handful of psychologists, a handful of OTs who I really like. We've collaborated together. Like, some of them I worked with at that very first job back in the day. Like, we've known each other for a long time. So often if one of us gets a new family, we're going around the circle like, okay, I need an SLP. You're going to love this family. You should come join us. Yeah. The government also will assign families to service providers, and then the service provider's job is to subcontract the contractors. Okay. And so I get a lot of my clients from the organizations that are looking for the subcontractors. And I think we all, if you're in private, you know what the after school weekend demand is like, because when kids are in school all day, you can't be programming at home. So they're always like, can you take another one? Do you have a spot at 4:00? Do you have anything on the weekend? So I was advertising through Alberta's Private Practice Association a little bit, but honestly, mostly if I feel like I have a spot, I just email one of the directors. I'm like, hey, I have a spot. And next day, here's a kid.
Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing when you build those relationships and then you start to get those pretty known referral basis. I hear people go, I mean, myself included, when I was first going into private practice, I was really worried about, was I going to find clients? How was I going to fill up my caseload? And it was very nerve-wracking that first year. And then after that, I just realized, I'm like, they will come. There are so many needs in our communities that if you just keep, for me, SLPs are often my referral source. I find that as an OT, I find that families often gravitate towards speech. It's a little more obvious for people, or just a more pressing need for people. It's like if someone's not communicating right, then they want that to be better. And so, yeah, I know me having connections with SLPs in the community has been, for me, my way of getting referrals. So tell us about, so you mentioned your carbon copy receipt book. How were you charting? Like, what did that back end look like for you in those early days of your private practice?
So my folders had those little, I don't know what they're actually called, but the little prongs.
Yeah.
And they have the little bar you slide on and then you fold the prongs over. So the left side of my file was my like running chart note, and the right side of my file was anything else. So anything I shared with parents, any reports I'd written, anything the family had shared with me that was previously done. And I wasn't the world's worst charter, but it was probably pretty close. Like I had a filing cabinet for them all, but if I had not yet put the chart note in, I would stack it on my desk. And there would be times when I come downstairs and the stack on the desk is like this. And I'm about to see the kid for another visit. And it's like, oh,
where is
boy,
it? Oh, crap,
that
it's at the
wasn't
bottom.
great. So I did that for a while. And then paper files just seemed to me to be a little bit ludicrous with everything sort of moving in the digital direction. So then I did Word documents for a while. So I had a file folder for each kid, and I had a Word document where I would just add the note, but it wasn't any better really about adding my notes to those than I had been handwriting them, other than it was faster to get caught up. And I hated the formatting, which again is like not the priority, but as someone who wanted things to look a certain way, it really didn't look good. I didn't like it. So that's kind of where I was at when Tegan, my friend who is also an SLP, was like, you've got to hear about this software that I'm using. It's so good. And it is exactly what we need. And it is literally designed for clinicians like us.
And had you considered switching, like, had the thought about there being a software, had the idea of an EMR,
it had not even occurred to me. I had a website, which I was paying for through Squarespace. Yeah. And I had a scheduling system, which I was paying for through a company called Simply Book Me. And I was using FreshBooks for my financial stuff. I had graduated from my carbon copy receipt book. But I honestly, it never occurred to me really even to look for something that would be all inclusive, that would even exist. And I don't even think really it had dawned on me that something would exist specifically for the charting and the medical records.
Right.
I had heard some people talk about, I think it's Jane, but I kind of had looked at it, but it looked like it was really designed for clinics. And I was like, as just me, it didn't make sense to have this huge software package when I was just one clinician with the type of work I do, I carry a caseload minus the school contract of like 20 to 25 kids. So why would I need all this other stuff? So no, it really hadn't even dawned on me. And then Tegan gave me the referral, and then I met Mike at a conference, and he sort of laid it out for me, and I was just like, this, like, all of this is like in one. The invoicing wasn't quite there yet, and I was a little bit like, true. I'm really gonna need some invoicing in there. That's really what would seal the deal for me. Yeah. And the fact that it was designed for someone who had a little caseload, who wasn't part of a clinic that had 10 or 12 staff, like, I was blown away. It's like, it's amazing. Why didn't I think of this?
That's awesome. What would you say is the main, like, in making that shift from, because, you'd kind of piecemealed a few things together, but what was the advantage? What was the main thing that you were trying to solve by going from this piecemeal to Therabyte?
It was just so many balls in the air, right? Like, you constantly had something that needed to be renewed. So there's like, I need to pay for my website. I need to buy. Simply Book Me, you could, it wasn't like an annual subscription. You would actually purchase like the number of scheduled appointments you wanted.
Oh, interesting.
Like, shoot, I'm out of appointments. I need to get some more. It's a weird thing to say. And it was just sort of like everything was all over the place. And one of the things I really love about Therabyte is with it all just being in one place. Like, it's not like it takes so long to log into Squarespace and then to log into FreshBooks, but like the little bits of time that you save by just having it all under one roof, there's no way that doesn't add up. And then you just have nice, like, everything fits together. So the way the charting connects to the invoicing, I have told you several times, is like my most favorite feature. Yeah. But it all connects together so seamlessly that you're not worried about like, oh, how do I make sure, I don't know, how do I stay on top of my charting so that I have what I need to do my invoicing? How do I make
Right.
sure I don't forget an appointment off the schedule when I'm doing my invoicing? Like
Yeah.
everything just comes together.
Yeah. And that's really, I mean, that's so cool because I think about where Mike and I were at as we were building it and the things that we were thinking. And what I'm hearing is this transformation really within your practice, going from this splintered workflow to, oh, like trying to remember all of these pieces to the system then doing some of that for you. Am I right? Or am I?
Yes. No, it was just so much smoother. And it took me a little while to cut my apron strings. FreshBooks was probably the one that took me the longest, just because as soon as you cancel your subscription, you don't have access to any of your archived
Right.
documentation. Like, unless you have saved it all, it's yourself, it's not available to you anymore. But just like slowly canceling those other subscriptions and realizing I was only dealing with one software package, I guess. It's like, oh, this is so much easier. It's so much tidier. I think everything is a little bit more uniform, which I like, that matters to me. So,
And so, what have you seen? What other transformations have you seen in switching your systems? Have you seen other areas of growth within your private practice?
well, let me tell you how much better my charting is. Because, so as a single parent and also as a subcontractor, my invoices have to be done at the end of the month. Like, I don't have a ton of wiggle room. And so, like, I can't put that appointment onto this invoice until the chart note is done. And so that has really significantly improved my consistency with charting. I think too, I don't often make my note while I'm in an appointment. I'm not quite there yet, but having the ability to do that. So especially if an appointment turns from being more kid focused to more conversation with a parent focused, and I really want to get the details of, they're telling me about what's happening at school, like I can just open the chart note up and start it right there. So that has also facilitated my charting. I like the way of tracking direct time versus indirect time. That's been really helpful, especially again, because with these government contracts, that's how we actually invoice our time. So breaking stuff out that way makes sure that I have a record for families too. If they're like, well, what was this half hour? Oh,
Right.
that's where I was writing documentation for you, or that's where I
Right.
was making those visuals we had talked about. So I think my charting is more timely, but I think it's also a little bit more complete.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And that's one yeah, congratulations. It's one I hear from a lot of people. Stacy, who I interviewed last month, she's an SLP as well, working in private practice part-time. And she said it's the same thing. She's like, she said the same thing. I was the world's worst charter. And now I get it done, and the way the 3-step scheduler with the visual cues, it's easy to look at your schedule and go, oh yeah, okay, that's where I need to be. And I think it's shifting those habits too, of pulling out your laptop in the middle of a session and starting to write things down, even if you're not finishing the whole note, or pulling out your phone, and starting to get things in. At least it's like, okay, I've got it started. There's something there, even if I have to finish it later.
And I just think the time savings, like handwriting a chart note, if it was brief, which most of mine were pretty brief, maybe 5 to 7 minutes. But for me, typing that same note takes 1 or 2 minutes. And so I'm more inclined to put more information in it. So the chart notes are beefier. And I think just the accumulated time savings have been just a huge, like a value that I wasn't expecting to get necessarily.
Yeah, that's amazing. It would have been so cool to go back in time and to actually add up all those minute transitions. I've considered that. And I've actually considered doing a research project. If anyone out there is listening to this and they want to support a research idea, taking someone who has this splintered workflow and capturing those chunks of time wasted, and then switching and then seeing the difference, I think I'm with you. It's significant, even if it's just, I know there's a time saving, but there's also a mental gymnastics saving, right? Of like, where is this and where is that? And I need to wait, did I do that other thing? Workflow is so important. And time is money in private practice, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, every minute of your day matters. And let's be honest, no one really likes the admin side of our job. Like we don't see kids because we want to write notes and we want to send invoices. Those are all the things we don't want to do. So if you can eliminate as many steps as possible and just have this more streamlined workflow, it actually makes your job more enjoyable. Would you say that's something that you've like, have you seen that transformation in your private practice?
Well, I have a double whammy. So I both have Therabyte, but I also hired someone to do my scheduling for me.
Ooh.
So when I looked at what took time, particularly because when I picked up this school contract, it messed with sort of how I'd been doing my scheduling previously. So I had previously had kind of a week A, week B. So I saw this family, your Monday at 4, on the first and third weeks of the month. This other family, your Mondays at 4 on the second and fourth weeks. And it was working okay. But when I took this school contract, I had to commit a week a month to the school. And so all of a sudden you can't do this alternating. And I was like, I don't know how I want to deal with this. I don't know if I want to try and figure out having families book their own appointments in the calendar. Do I want to hire someone to do my scheduling? And that's actually what I settled on, was that it was a part of my job I liked really the least, that I found the most challenging. Somebody else can do this. And so what's been great about Therabyte was that I was able to add an admin assistant. And it was a fairly new, like, I think actually when Sue first started for me, that wasn't really even a role yet. I kind of had just assigned her as a clinician. And then the admin assistant piece came live, and we were able to figure out a couple little things that were not quite working the way we wanted them to. And that's something else I really like about Therabyte, is that I was able to just say, hey, like, I'm running into this. Is there a solution for it? And someone gets back to you right away. We're looking into it. We're working on it. And it was resolved so quickly. And so now Sue is an admin person in my account. She's not a clinician. And it's been fantastic. She just goes in, puts the appointments in. I block off any time where I'm not available. If I need, like, I can still shift stuff in there if I need to, if a family contacts me instead. And so just having that joint access has been phenomenal.
Tell me a bit more about your process in hiring an admin assistant. I know this is one that is tough for people. A lot of people look at, oh, I can't afford the cost. But I'm hearing in you that you get to enjoy your job more because of it. And so there's really a lot of value there. But I'd love to hear more about how that came about, when you did that.
I cheated a little bit. So much like families looking for respite care, I think trying to find someone who's just going to do a few hours of something for you a month is really difficult. So I explored a couple of online options for not digital assistants, but virtual assistants.
Virtual assistants, yeah.
Yeah. And part of the problem I ran into was packages starting at like way too many hours a month. I didn't think I was going to need that many hours, and B, even if I wanted to, the cost for that many hours was just too much. And I was really worried because it's just me. Like, I wanted to know that when my family phones and talks, not my family, when a client family phones and talks to my scheduler, that they are representing my business well and in a way that I feel comfortable with. And I'm not worried that I'm going to have angry families because my admin person didn't handle the situation well.
Right.
So I was really like hemming and hawing and going back and forth. And I actually tried to talk my dad into doing it for me. And he was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing it. I'm retired. No way. So my mom was talking about it with her siblings, and her sister had just retired and was a little bit bored and finding the days a little bit long. And so Sue was like, well, I would do it for her. So she is actually my aunt, and she worked in insurance and as a legal assistant forever. And so she's super personable. I didn't have to check any references. I felt very comfortable. I've heard really good feedback from my families. They really like her. They find her easy to connect with and easy to talk to. So I guess my advice is look in your personal circle first and see
Yeah.
if you can find someone.
And how many
Yeah, 'cause
how many hours does she work for you?
on average, it works out to just 4 hours a month.
Nice.
So we settled on a rate of $25 an hour. And so
Yeah.
to me, $100 a month, and I don't have to deal with my calendar every month when I am sending her money. I think it's the best money I've spent. Like, this is so good. And I've also found, I don't know if you guys are like this, but sometimes when you're dealing with the family directly, and they're like, oh, the kids, they don't have school because that's that staff holiday Monday. Like, would you be willing to come out? And I'd be like, yeah, like, okay, it's just one visit. And then the day comes and I'm like, I would really like to be having this holiday the same as everybody else's. And having just that person in the middle who's like, oh, no, I'm sorry, she's not available that day, but I have this or this. What would work better for you? It's amazing. And over the summer, she got me down to a 4-day work week while still seeing everybody on my caseload. Like, I just can't. It's just so good.
That's
so good.
That's amazing. And on 4 hours a month. That's incredible.
Yeah. And I've been very clear with her that I don't want her to be underestimating, but she's kind of figured out her own system.
Yeah.
And I mean, being a little bit older, the tech side of Therabyte took her a little bit longer to kind of come up to speed with, but it's so intuitive in a lot of ways that the transition was really fairly seamless. We just had one hiccup where she couldn't delete appointments, and we got that figured out. So
yeah, that's amazing. And what was the tipping point for you? Like, what was going on in your business for you to be like, nope, this is the time I need to do this?
It was definitely that switch, bringing the school contract in, just not knowing that every month I was now going to have to figure out kind of on an individual basis where everybody fit in.
Yeah.
In fact, I almost didn't take the school contract because of the thought of what it would do to my scheduling for everything else. So that was definitely the push.
And have you increased your income by being able to take that school contract?
Yes. School contracts, because it is in a more rural area, it's a little bit of a bigger commitment. But they're super flexible. So the way it works for me is 1 month I go up there Monday, I drive up Sunday night and I come home Friday. So it was a bit of a commitment to be willing to go out of town. But then on the alternating months, I just do Zoom with them. We do telehealth. So, but there's just a little bit more built in, right? So you get paid. I get paid half my rate for the travel time, but I also get the kilometer rate for the mileage. Plus, of course, they pay all your accommodations, but there's also a per diem, which I find this particular division has been quite generous with. So even if you choose to like I often, because I get tired of hotel food, will just buy groceries and take them with me. And so then you don't necessarily spend all of the per diem. Right. And then being in private practice, getting to put like 7 hours as a chunk on like, when does that happen? It never happens. You were here for an hour and 15 minutes if you're me, and then you drove for 45 minutes to the next place, and then there's an hour and 15 minutes there. And so being able to have these large continuous chunks of time for the school was a huge financial boost. Yes. So definitely in that whole, like, did I win or lose taking the contract, but then hiring someone to manage the schedule? Right. I won. Like, yeah. There's no question.
Hands down. That's amazing. Okay. What would you say? Sorry. What advice would you give to anyone who's considering going into private practice?
Just do it. Just take. I mean, maybe don't leap into it full time if that feels overwhelming. Because I totally was the person who's like, no, I want that pension, I want that benefits package, I want that reassurance if provincial funding goes crazy next year. I probably still have a job, but like, it's so easy to start with just a couple kids. It's so easy to just dip your toes in the water, get a feel for it. I think we should just all do it, is what I think, probably mostly.
I love it because I feel the same way. I'm like, why doesn't everyone do private practice? Isn't it the best?
I had a friend recently, she's in editing, so it's not quite the same thing, but she was asking me these questions about, like, how, just similar kinds of things about working for yourself. And I was like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't think there's as much there to consider as it feels like there should be.
Yes. Yes.
Like, when you get right down to it, as long as you have as long as you are a competent therapist, that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
But in terms of, do you need an entire therapy room full of stuff? Do you need a clinic with 12 other people? No, you need yourself and your skill set and a few materials. And then you do need a way. You need a way to manage your scheduling and your records and your invoicing. And honestly, I am not being paid by Therabyte to say this, like, just to be clear. But now that you can just, like, sign up and have it all in one spot, it's even easier than it was, because you're not worried. Like, do I have a filing cabinet that locks? Are there 2 locked doors between my filing cabinet and the outside of the house for insurance purposes? Like there's just really not so much to
where
think
am I
about.
going to store my files for like 20 plus years after I finish private practice? Yeah, I was
I'm going to bequeath those 2 if I die unexpectedly.
Right. Yeah, I was chatting with an OT that just retired in Kelowna, and she's like, if I had known about this before, I would have signed up. And I think she heard about it in her last year before she retired. She's like, now I am going through all of my paper files of being in private practice for the last 20 years. I'm figuring out which pieces need to be scanned, taking out the ones that don't. I purchased a high-speed scanner, and I'm scanning everything in and then putting it on a drive that I'm going to put in a lockbox for the next however many years she has to keep the files. And I was like, ugh, like, it just, I was like it hurt. I was like, I wish. She's like, if you have any ideas of a better way to do it, I was like, go back in time and buy Therabyte. Like, I don't have a good answer for you. Like, that is just the reality. We have to keep our files and they have to be secure. And anyways, it is doable. You can buy a storage unit and you can, hold those pieces of paper forever in your life, but you cannot.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
I'm super lucky. I went digital when all of my paper files still fit in one file box.
Nice.
So I have this file box that's going to have to go with me everywhere for the next however long.
Yeah.
Well, no more.
You could scan them.
You
could hire someone else. You could hire someone else.
Is what I do.
Okay, we're down to our rapid fire questions. Tell me.
Well, I think Kimberly has a question.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question about that, scanning the documents in and filing them, because I've just started doing some of that for the SLP that I'm working for. And I'm finding that the only place, unless I'm missing the mark on this, like for example, scanning in a contract from the government for funding, but it's the only place to hold that is in notes. So I can upload it. It goes into uploads, but it's also in notes. So is there any way to categorize a lot of these documents?
No. The short answer, I have 2 thoughts for you. The short answer is no. The longer answer is, if you were to create a note and add multiple attachments, you could name that note a category. So this is something that has come up, and we have considered creating, Therabyte's not a file management system, but we have considered how we could fit in a few pieces to improve that so that it has more of a file management feel. So you're right. There is just kind of that one uploads area, everything goes there. If you were to do it a bit differently, you could say, okay, this note is going to include all of these attachments and they are all related to contracts. And this one is going to be related to, and then you would add in your other categories. So that would kind of be a way to work around it if that makes sense for your workflow.
Yeah, that does. That's actually excellent. We've started with creating a master list of titles for the notes so that when we go to search between the different practitioners, they're using the same abbreviations to search up the same sort of notes. So we started moving towards that.
That's brilliant.
And so therefore started the same titling for contract specific paperwork. But I like that concept of using one note to add multiple contracts, even for the year 2022, and then a new one for 2023. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will come. I love it. And Ella, I mean, you've been with us, little did you know, very much since the beginning. And there's been so much evolution in what is provided. Like, I don't even think I could name all of the features that exist now compared to back then. And so that is definitely one that it will come. It will come. I don't have a time frame for you, but it will come. Okay.
Another thing I like about Therabyte, because you can say, it'd be really great if we could do this. And someone puts it on a list somewhere. It maybe doesn't come right away, right? Like there's other stuff but like somebody actually listens and is like, yeah, okay. We'll add that to the list of things it would be great if we could do with this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of my favorite things is as the one making some of those decisions, is to actually go through and be like, I can put a name to a lot of features. Oh, we built that for Cheryl, and we built that for Denise, and we built that for Karen. It's actually really cool to know the person behind, and usually I might think of one person, but I know there were 5 other people, you know, because those are the ones that reach the top of the list. When we get enough people saying the same thing over and over, we go, oh yeah, this is a need for the community that we're building for. So let's now build that in. Okay, that brings us to, what is your favorite Therabyte feature and why?
Can you guess? It's the fact that you have to do your charting before you can do your invoicing. And it's because it just keeps me more organized and more on top of things. And I actually had a parent say to me not that long ago that she appreciated how timely the invoices were, because she's working with another therapist who often will go 2 or 3 months without invoicing. And then she gets this huge invoice, which is really hard to deal with. So I think it's also appreciated, although they might not realize it all the time, by families as well, that it's timely and organized.
Amazing. What is the thing that you love most about being in private practice?
Well, I mean, the kids, and the fact that I get to spend so much more time with individual kids and their families, and the family coaching piece, and also the level of control I get to decide how I want things done and then do them that way.
Amazing. Amazing. If you could give yourself one piece of advice going back in time to when you were first making that switch, what would it be?
Oh, geez. What did I tell you in our pre-conversation? I don't remember. Was it just do it? It might have been just do it.
I might not have asked you that in our pre-conversation. That one I sprung on you.
Yeah. Just trust yourself and just do it. Just go for it.
It'll all be okay. It'll all work out.
It will, 100%.
Amazing. And what could you say to anyone who is, maybe they've started their private practice and they're really kind of in that in between of, can I afford an EMR? Is it really worth it if I only have a couple clients? Or, what would you say to that person?
I mean, part of me again is like, just do it. It's going to make everything so much easier, especially as you start to grow, because I don't know very many people who did a little private practice and then got out of it. I know a lot of people who did a little private practice and then did a lot more of it. So my suspicion is you'll just be set up for greater success down the line. That being said, all right, if you've got 2 kids and you're only ever planning to see 2 kids, I don't know, talk to Mike and Ashley and see if they have a solution that fits for you. But mostly I think you should just do it because it's going to start with 2 and then it's going to be full time is what I think will happen.
Yep. That's so true. That's so true. Okay. Ella, thank you so much for sharing your journey in private practice, what that's looked like, your transition into Therabyte, and the way that having those backend systems has really supported you in growing. And I just can hear your growth in so many ways, in your confidence, in the way you've invested in even in other people, right, to support you in your business. That's really amazing.